In this video, we are going to talk about some irregular verbs in German language and why are they called irregular verbs? Because they don't get, let's say, the same specific endings that a regular verb does. For example, there are some verbs in German language where the stem ends in D or T. And of course, it would be a little bit difficult to pronounce the ST endings for do and the D ending for er, the S, and ihr if just ST or T was added to the stem. That's why we need an extra E to put before these endings so we can have, let's say, an easier pronunciation. For example, let's take the verb arbeiten. So the stem ends in T, and if we don't add the E, then we would have du arbeitst. That's a bit hard, a bit difficult to pronounce. That's why we need to add an E. And then we have du arbeitest, kosten, es kostet, reden, ihr redet. So the same applies for the verb reden because the stem ends in D. And it would be extremely difficult to say ihr redet. So it's not easy to pronounce. The same applies for other verbs such as atmen and regnen. In this case, so these verbs, their stem ends in a consonant plus N or M. And also here we need to add an additional E. So we have atmen, du atmest, regnen, es regnet. Let's read some examples. Du atmest sehr heftig. Herr Meier arbeitet bei Siemens. Es regnet schon wieder. Das Buch kostet 5 Euro. Ihr redet zu viel. And only do, er, sie, es, and ihr are affected. So only this personal pronouns, the other ones aren't affected or don't change, let's say, their endings, their normal endings. And here we have an example of the conjugation of the verb arbeiten. And let's go on with the next category of verbs. Those verbs whose stem ends in S, double S, SZ, X, C, T, Z. So in this case, what happens? For do, we don't add the normal ending, which is ST, but we add only T. Reisen, du reist. Küssen, er küsst. Heißen, du heißt. Also for küssen, du küsst. So the second and the third person singular is the same for the verb küssen. Du küsst, er küsst. Let's read some examples. Reist du wieder nach Italien? Du heißt doch Frank, oder? Susi küsst gern. Also, the same pattern applies for a few verbs where the stem ends in xz or tz. Faxen, du faxt. Tanzen, du tanzt. Schwitzen, du schwitzt. So we don't add st but just t. That's easier to pronounce. Irregular verbs with vowel changes. There is a group of German verbs where the vowel in the stem changes in the present tense, and these changes apply only in the do and er, es, sie forms. None of the other endings is affected. Here are examples in some frequently used verbs. The verb schlafen, to sleep. Er schläft. Essen, to eat. Sie isst. Sprechen, to speak. Du sprichst. Lesen, to read. Du liest. Sehen, to see. Er sieht. Let's read some examples. Liest du gern Harry Potter? Er sieht ein Fußballspiel. Sie isst gern Pizza. Sprichst du Deutsch? Sie schläft bis 11 Uhr.